Welcome back to Flashpoint. A frenzy of filing this past week. Candidates can once again officially file to run for office after a state Supreme Court decision. Joining us now, Catawba College professor Dr. Michael Bitzer. He's an expert on all things redistricting. As I always say, literally wrote the book on this topic, like literally has the book. So a bunch of ground to cover. So are these the final, definitive congressional maps that we got this week?
With all fingers crossed, I hope so. There is the potential, however, for an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court that could involve a potential federal question regarding the congressional district maps. And that could be the only potential roadblock that I see moving forward to having the May primary and ultimately these maps holding. But that potential is still out there, but I think we are close to the finish line.
That'd be a pretty big deal if it happens. All right, let's pull up the congressional map. And we should say that the state legislative maps are less of an issue because the Supreme Court signed off on those that had already been done by the Republican lawmakers. It was They had the special masters redraw, the map that folks see right now. And I don't think you can see this right now, Bitzer, but it's a map of the congressional map as they drew it. Broadly speaking, because I'm going to drill down on some of the specific districts here in Charlotte, but broadly speaking, with people looking at this, what are your biggest takeaways?
I think the biggest takeaway, certainly for Mecklenburg and the Charlotte region, is that the city of Charlotte basically gets split into two congressional districts, the 12th and the 14th. And what's very interesting was that 14th district was originally designed to be a kind of landing spot for North Carolina Speaker of the House, Tim Moore. That district has shifted so much now and is much more democratic that I think right now Mecklenburg could be represented by two Democratic members of Congress. The other big one to watch is the 13th congressional district. That covers the southern half of Wake County, specifically Raleigh, into Johnston and a couple other counties there. That's an open seat district. No incumbent is currently representing that particular area, and that's going to be probably the key swing district in the state to watch in terms of the dynamics of who potentially controls the congressional district, Republicans or Democrats, or could it be a conceivable 7-7 split in the congressional delegation?
All right, let me ask you a simple question. It's a simple question to me. I think it's a simple question to the viewers. I know politicians watching this will think it's a loaded question, but we got a new seat because of our population boom in North Carolina. That population boom happened mainly in two big areas, the Charlotte area, Raleigh area. Why else would that seat go anywhere else than, if not Raleigh, why would it not go in the Charlotte area when that is where the population boom happened? You talked about the areas west of the city of Charlotte and that it could go to a different area, but this is where the population boom happened. Why would it not go here?
By all logic, that's the way it should have been played out.
See, that's what you're talking. You're talking logic.
Logic is what I'm talking about. The reality is politics. Redistricting is the most political activity in American politics nowadays. And what the Republicans were viewing it as, they certainly understand the political geography of North Carolina. They understand that Democrats control mostly urban areas. They are concentrated in urban areas, but Republicans are more spread out. And so if you go back to last fall, when the legislature drew their first map, the 14th district started in Mecklenburg, but went west. And that was a very Republican area. Gaston County, Cleveland County, into Rutherford, Lincoln County. Those counties are heavily Republican. So Republicans were doing what they typically tend to do, and that is draw partisan dynamics to favor their party over the other party. And that was the rationale behind how that district has shifted from a Republican district now to most likely a Democratic one.
All right, let's zoom in now again on the closer look of some of the local districts. And you've been talking about this, but as it appears right now, the 12th district there, northern Charlotte, and then northeast of that, Alma Adams, that looks like that would be a pretty secure seat for her to remain, her district changing a little bit.
Yes.
You've got the 8th district to the right, Dan Bishop territory. That district has changed, but it is still appears to be fairly safe for him.
Yes, by my calculations, if you look at the three big elections out of 2020, presidential, Senate, and gubernatorial, the 8th district would basically be a 2-to-1 Republican district, whereas the 12th district, Alma Adams, would be a 2-to-1 Democratic district.
And then that 14th district, the one that we've been talking about. Again, this would be, does this basically mean that Charlotte is getting more representation now in Congress?
Yes, I think certainly that Charlotteans can say, you know, my city is split, but now I have 2 members of Congress to represent the interests and concerns of Charlotte. Now, these 2 districts are most likely going to be Democratic districts. By my calculations, the 14th district could be a 58-42 Democratic district. If the Democrats lose control of the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, those 2 Democrats would become members of the minority party. So there is a real balance in terms of the partisan dynamics. This is just the way that Charlotte has been trending, that Mecklenburg County has been trending. Much more Democratic urban counties are doing that across the nation. North Carolina is no exception.
You hear Republicans crying to foul about this. I feel like this is what happens now, is that when the maps are drawn to favor the Republicans, Democrats complain. When they are drawn to favor the Democrats, the Republicans complain. This is what the ongoing conversation you and I have been having for years now about, can we find a fair way of doing this? But Republicans are already saying, all right, guys, you want to do this, but come next year, we're going to get our way.
Exactly. And I think that the word is on the street now, not just for control of the General Assembly that will control the next round of congressional redistricting, because remember, the court said this map only holds for 2022's elections. Next year, the legislature will have to redraw the congressional districts. The other key dynamic, watch the election to the North Carolina State Supreme Court. 2 seats are open for election, one a re-elect, the other an open seat. Republicans have vowed they are going to capture at least one of those seats, and then the dynamic would shift to a Republican majority on the state Supreme Court, and they would most likely overturn this previous decision to say partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional in North Carolina. And then we could see a significant Republican advantage in drawing the new congressional maps for 2024 and beyond.
The maps that we've been looking at this morning, do you consider them to be more proportional, more competitive than what Republicans came up with a few weeks ago?
I think the key difference between what the Republicans came up with the second redraw and what the court did was exactly that. The Republicans actually had several competitive districts. If that map had held, North Carolina would hold probably the most competitive districts in one state for the entire nation. What the court did was shift it from competitiveness to proportionality. And I think that that's the real dynamic at play here between these 2 maps.
Interesting. So maybe less competitive, which honestly I think most voters would want things to be competitive, because when there's competition, these politicians, Democrat, Republican, got to work for your vote, and they don't just, sort of glide in on the coattails of others. So go ahead real quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other key thing is, can these districts be responsive to the will of the voters? If the will of the voters goes Democratic one year, the districts reflect that. If it goes Republican the next time, it reflects that. That dynamic really isn't at play in these new maps.
All right, Professor, always the smartest man when we talk about this topic. We appreciate it. Take care. More Flashpoint coming up after this right here on WCNC Charlotte.